100 men telling me cover up my areolas while they blocking equal pay, sipping on their Coca-Colas. Fake news, fake booze, fake food, what's real? Still in the matrix, eating on the blue pills. The devil met with Russia and they just made a deal. We was marching through the street, they were blocking every bill. I'm tired of hoteps trying to tell me how to feel. For real. Yeah, this is my palace. Champagne in my chalice. I got it all covered like a wedding band. Wonderland, so my alias is Alice. And we gon' start a motherfucking pussy riot. Or we gon' have to put them on a pussy diet. Look at that, I guarantee I got them quiet. Look at that, I guarantee they all inspired. A-Town made it out there. Straight out Kansas City, yeah, we made it out there. Celebrated, graduated, made it past fail. Sassy, classy, Kool-Aid with the kale. Mama was a G, she was cleaning hotels. Papa was a driver, I was working retail. Kept us in the back of the store, we ain't hitting no more. Moonlit nigga, lit nigga. Already got the Oscar for the Casa. Running down Grammys with the family. Probably give a Tony to the homies. Probably get an Emmy dedicated to the highly melanated. Arc Android orchestrated. Yeah, we highly melanated. Arc Android orchestrated. Yeah, Gemini still jamming. Box office numbers and they doing outstanding. Running out of space on the damn bandwagon. Remember when they used to say I look too mannish? Black girl magic, y'all can't stand it. Y'all can't ban it. Made out like a bandit. They've been trying hard just to make us all vanish. I suggest they put a flag on a whole nother planet. Jane Bond, never Jane Doe. And I Jane Go, never Sambo. Black and white, yeah, that's always been my camo. It's looking like y'all gon' need some more ammo. I cut 'em off, I cut 'em off, I cut 'em off like Van Gogh. Now, paying right for the angle. I got away with murder, no scandal. Cue the violins and violas. We gave you life, we gave you birth, we gave you God, we gave you earth. We filmed the future, don't make it worse. You want the world, well what's it worth? Emoticons, Decepticons, and Autobots who twist the plot, who shot the sheriff, then fled to Paris. In the darkest hour, spoke truth to power, made a Android out of your girlfriend. Let's get caught downtown in the world.
Hello, can you hear me? Good morning. Good morning, Allied Media Conference. Thank you for making your way here. We know that it's early, it's 9 a.m., and there was a lot of exciting stuff to do last night. So thank you for coming for this conversation about shaping data and shaping power. I'm going to, first let me make an announcement that there is accessible seating in the front row. So that is available if anybody needs that. I'm just going to briefly actually read the description of the conversation we're about to have, and then the bios of the panelists, and then we're going to get into it. So the Cambridge Analytica scandal and the subsequent Facebook hearings made clear to the world that what targeted communities have known for a long time. Our data bodies are vulnerable and can not only be attacked, but can be weaponized against us. But the threat that we face is more than reckless tech CEOs and nefarious political actors. It's the uncritical advancement of the smart city, quote-unquote, technologies, of so-called predictive policing, and of artificial intelligence that reproduces the bias of its makers and perpetuates violent narratives and policies. But we're hoping that we can also move beyond paranoia to power, as the Our Data Bodies project has declared, and that we can learn from the long legacy of resistance by communities of color to the extraction and exploitation of our data, and that we can demystify data and engage the public in rigorous dialogue about who owns data, who governs it, and who is impacted. We can harness the data and the brilliance of our own communities to build the liberatory tools we need. And to guide us through this conversation, I have the honor of introducing these three brilliant panelists. and I'm just going to do the bios first, and then we'll enter into the conversation. So first, Ruha Benjamin is Associate Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, where she studies the social dimensions of science, medicine, and technology. She's the author of People's Science and Race After Technology, and editor of Captivating Technology. She writes, teaches, and speaks widely about the relationship between power and innovation, race and citizenship, health and justice. And so please welcome Ruha. Tawana Honeycomb Petty is a mother, anti-racist social justice organizer, youth advocate, poet, and author. More volume? Okay. She's the Data Justice Coordinator and Communications Assistant for the Detroit Community Technology Project, DCTP, the founding member of the Our Data Bodies Project, ODB, and member of the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition, director of Propolis, and founding member of Riverwise Magazine Collective. She's published 2 poetry books, 1 political reader, and an anti-racism curriculum guide. Honeycomb is most proud of her ability to resist getting stuck in old ideas. So thank you for being here. And Dr. Courtney Ryan Ziegler is the creator of Abolition, an app that converts spare change into bail money to free Black people. Courtney is also founder of Trans Hack, the only tech event of its kind that spotlights trans-created tech and trans-led startups. Yes. Dr. Ziegler is also an Oakland-based award-winning artist, writer, and the first person to hold the PhD of African American Studies from Northwestern University. He was recently named one of the top 40 under 40 LGBT activists by The Advocate magazine, and number 29 of the most influential African Americans of 2013 by the Root 100. So welcome, Dr. Ziegler. So thank you all for being here. We're excited to get into the conversation, and Dr. Ruha Benjamin is going to lead us off.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Good morning, AMC. Good morning. Wasn't that an amazing opening plenary last night? I'm still on the waves of that and waiting for my hover Lamborghini too. So it's a beautiful thing, and justice and peace too. It's a special place, a special conference. It's my first time here, and I see the gravitational pull that's been trying to get me here for a while. My homegirl Moya, and many others that have been actually planting little AMCs all around the country. Now I understand where all the wonderful ideas and energy have been coming from. And so today I'd like to actually go back a slide. Am I controlling this, or are you all? Let's see. I want to go back. All right, so data, power, and purpose. Is our cyborg kindred here feeling pleasure or pain? The ambivalence is part of the conversation, that not everything that we talk about in terms of data and power falls clearly on one side or the other of this dichotomy. And so in many ways, we have to wrestle with the desires that are entangled with data and power, the way that it complicates and draws us all into the process. To get us started, I think one of the mythologies that we have to unseat is this idea that what we're talking about is all new and shiny, right? People have been working at the nexus of data and power for as long as there's been data and power. So I want to call some of those spirits into the room with us this morning. We have Harriet Tubman here using the power of analysis to get us free. We have Ida B. Wells drawing together statistics and storytelling to get us free. We have Du Bois bringing together the earliest data visualization you can think of to get us free. And we have many people, including Octavia Butler, who've been pushing our imaginations beyond the bounds that we set for ourselves. Here in her journal, she is writing herself into existence. I will find the way to do this, so be it, see to it. Can you repeat after me? I will find the way to do this, so be it, see to it. Data and power all around us. We are building on this longer genealogy. We have to undo the mythology that what we're talking about and dealing with is all novel and new, right? And questioning the very idea of innovation. We have many activists and organizations who've been working for a long time to get us to think differently about how we use our powers of analysis to get us free. We have many scholars and teachers who've been writing and thinking hard about the issues that we might not have all the answers, but we can ask some damn good questions. We have also community and kin who are analyzing data all around us, telling stories that unseat power. Here's my grandma working in South Central Department of Adoptions in Los Angeles, trying to use from within systems of oppression, trying to draw kindred together in important ways. And many of your grandmas and aunties and uncles and kin are part of this conversation. We are not the experts in here doing things for people out there. We have a lot to learn from the communities that we work in. Likewise, none of this is possible without artists and storytellers, not just those on the big screen, but also those on the little screens. Without poets, without storytellers, artists, the idea of data makes no sense. I'm going to tell us a few examples, share a few examples that illustrate the notion that the facts will not save us. The facts alone will not save us. Quick illustration, if you pull out your laptop, maybe a year ago, you type in 2 words. One of these would be recognized, one would not, as indicated by the little red line there, right? So we know power is relational. If there's an up, there's a down, right? If there's an underserved, there's an overserved. But if we don't have a word for it, we don't have a language for it, we can't talk about it. That means we can't intervene in it. So who decides that overserved is not a thing, right? Now, if you go there today, you will actually find for most of us, that little red line is gone, which tells us we can also transform these programs, right? We can call them out, draw attention to them, expose them, then the language has to catch up to our sensibilities, to our insights. And so this is no longer the case. A recent study out of Stanford did a survey of folks coming off of the BART train in San Francisco, walking on the street in New York City, showing people data about the racial disparities in the criminal justice system. And what they did was show them the disproportionate rates of caging up black people, and then ask them, okay, now that you know this, you see this, would you support, in the case of California, changes to the 3 strikes law, in New York, changes to stop and frisk policy? And what they found was that the more that people were exposed to the data, that in fact they were less likely to want to change the policies that undo them. And they became more severe in their thinking. So the question for us is, why doesn't data equal consciousness raising, awareness, right? In the straightforward, linear way that we've been told it will, right? The more data, the more knowledge, the more change, the more people will get it, right? So the question for us is, why is that? What are the interpretive lenses, the stories that people are telling themselves about why people deserve to be caged, right? If we don't deal with those stories, the data alone will not save us. That's why we need the storytellers, the poets. We need all of us to begin to shape the discourse around the so-called facts if we hope for them to make a change. We're living at a time now, you turn on any screen, any device, we know that children all across the nation, right, are being impacted by so-called more humane ways to control people and police people. A report out of California, the first ever report that looked at the role of electronic monitoring on youth, found that many youth were reincarcerated for technical violations, right? Arbitrary technical violations. So the so-called more humane devices and ways of surveilling people, in fact, create new opportunities to be punished, right? And the very same companies that are profiting off of these ankle bracelets and electronic monitoring devices are those now we know that are in the business of so-called detention centers and immigrant prisons, right? And so we have to look at these chains of profitability when it comes to so-called more humane ways of employing data, big data. And so a concept that I'm thinking through these ideas with is the new Jim Code, right? The combo of coded bias and imagined objectivity, right? It's the way that innovation can enable containment. This notion has many cousin concepts: algorithms of oppression, technological redlining, automated inequality, digital poorhouse. Virginia Eubanks, Sophia Noble, many people in this room are trying to think through, giving us a language not just for the overserved, but all of the ways in which innovation creates a veneer for new forms of social control that on the surface seem more humane and progressive than regimes of social control in the past. But this is what we're here to question. The new Jim Code. Quick example of a technical fix that's supposed to undo bias, get around bias. In the context of hiring people for jobs, we now have AI-powered software that allows you to give an interview online. It keeps track of thousands of data points, the way that you twitch, the way that you move, all of these thousands of data points that are supposedly less biased than a human sitting across from you, who might not give you the job because of their own racism, sexism, so on. But in this case, we have to ask ourselves, what is the training data that is teaching the algorithm what to look for in terms of a good recruit? Who are they comparing us to? In many ways, in many cases, it's the people that are already seen as prized in their companies, which we can think about the demographics of that. And so we are likely to expect what some call more and more racist robots, right? So I want to go back a slide. Let's see if I can get this. So higher view is one of many that are already being employed in many Goldman Sachs, many, many different companies that we can think of. And so in terms of technical fixes, right, and racist robots, there are already people developing ways to counteract, to deal with that. One such is one of these unions in Europe that's developed a data rights principles, right, for workers. And so we can think about these more institutionalized, rights-based approaches, but we shouldn't limit our imagination there, I think, in terms of the critical race theorist Derek Bell's sensibility that some ways to be able to see clearly what's in front of us, we have to imagine how else they might be. To see things as they really are, you must imagine them for what they might be. And so one team developed a white-collar crime early warning system, for example. You get alerts, download this app, you go through a city, and there are hot spots about where white crime is likely going down. They have, in fact, employed facial recognition, taking thousands of LinkedIn photographs of CEOs, and now, if you fit that profile, you're likely to be flagged. And on the one hand, we need that joy and humor, but we also know that these kinds of systems are already being deployed against our communities, right? And so the absurdity of it is only evident when we flip the script, when we think about it being deployed on those who monopolize power and resources. But the fact is, we are already seeing these rolled out. And I was privileged to sit in a few sessions yesterday, one, Stop LAPD Spying, and our data bodies that are doing the work of exposing the reality that this parody is drawing attention to. We have groups like Hyphen Labs that's showing us that refashioning the relationship between technology and inequity can actually involve fashion, right? And so we have ideas around earrings that record the police as you look and fly at the same time. We have visors that protect you from facial recognition. And so we have to think about pushing the bounds of our imagination and what's possible in the realm of data and power. We have to think about not only the policing that happens out there, but the policing that we engage in here, right? And so the way that we internalize these systems, we have to extricate even from our own thinking and our own language and imagination of what's possible. And so with that, I leave you with those few comments and leave time for my colleagues here. Thank you.
First of all, can you hear me? Is this good? Give it up again for Ruha, please. It was hard not being a fangirl seeing her in our session yesterday, to be honest with y'all. So I'm Tawana, also known as Honeycomb, born and bred in Detroit, Michigan. What up, doe? Come on, y'all can say it. What up, doe? Yeah, that's a Detroit greeting. All right. So welcome to Detroit. I was born and bred in a city that has suffered under a half-century of propaganda assault. And so when Ruha talks about the ways that we've internalized the needs for some of these systems, it's really easy to internalize that when fear has been driven into your psyche. And so I was born and bred in a city where the rest of the world fears us. Okay, and so just keep that in perspective as I go through this presentation. So for me, what I wanted to talk about today was shifting from a security to a safety mindset. And what I mean by that is, for the most part, a lot of us, when we're thinking about safety, we're conflating it with security. And because we do that, we engage in these systems that help to surveil and expose our communities to harmful data practices. For an example, there's a new, and this is very new, so I'm just now, it's not even in the slide, but there's this new program in Detroit where they are surveilling children for the purposes of protection. And so, like, the bus will know if a kid enters it and gets off of it. So just think about that. If you're a parent who is thinking that the city may not be safe, that your child might be in danger, then you're going to advocate for that because that's what's been drilled into you psychologically. But what you really did is add your child to this data surveilling system that now they're automatically in this system from whatever age till they leave this place. Voluntarily, but we'll talk about that later. Come to building consentful technology and you'll see what consent really means. So I wanted to talk about the human impact. Our data bodies matter. For the last 3 years, through Detroit Community Technology Project, I've had the opportunity to work with the Our Data Bodies Research Project. It's a 3-city participatory research project that partners with Charlotte, my comrade Tamika Lewis in Charlotte, Mariela Saba in LA, and Virginia Eubanks and Sita Pina Gungarian, and I probably killed her last name. And so we've done over 130 interviews across those 3 cities, talking to people about their personal experiences with how they've been receiving their interactions with data. Okay. So the participating organizations, you heard Stop LAPD Spying mentioned earlier, the Los Angeles Community Action Network, also known as LA CAN, the Center for Community Transitions, and Detroit Community Technology Project. That's my team, that's my squad, ODB squad. You can hashtag that. So one of the things that we identified through our research across all 3 cities is that folks were feeling like the surveillance of their bodies was creating diversion in their lives. And so the information that was being gathered and collected about them was making it hard for them to get housing, was making it hard for them to keep jobs, was just making it hard for them to live. And so we think about data sometimes as like, it has to be collected. And in some ways that might be the case. But the way marginalized communities are feeling this data extraction is really impeding on their ability to live full lives. And that's across all 3 cities. So another thing that we identified was that folks want to be seen. They want to be, they want to be seen, not watched. Okay, and so that's a difference. That's another thing about the security mindset, is that it conflates being seen with being watched. Like, you don't want to feel invisible, but you also don't want to feel surveilled. And so across all 3 cities, our interviewees were telling us, like, I just feel like I'm being watched all the time. Like, everywhere I go, I'm being watched. Oh, okay, here I go with the clicker. So one of the things we have in Detroit right now is a green light district. I don't know, how many of you are familiar with the green light district? All right, good, I'm glad that you're not. And so what it is, like I said, when that fear-mongering has been drilled into your psyche, you advocate for things like surveillance technology on all the buildings and institutions. You want more cameras in your neighborhood because you want it to catch crime and those types of things. And so what they're doing now is a policy that's pretty much forcing all institutions that have late night hours to have this green light technology that is surveilled by the police 24 hours a day. And so it does not prevent crime, it just surveils and records it. And then it also records people who are not committing any crime. And so that's the psychology that we don't think about when we're asking for more and more surveillance. So it's protection for who? Is privacy really a thing? That's another one of the things that we saw across all 3 cities. Folks were realizing that they never felt a moment of real privacy since they've been exposed to all these systems that collect a lot of information about them. And so one of the exercises that we do in our data bodies workshops and focus groups is called What's in Your Wallet. And so we have folks thinking about, like, what are you carrying around with you that collects information about you? Like, what data systems did you interact with today? And how much of your information did you have to exchange in order to get whatever it is you got? And so folks started to think about, like, wow, like, is there any moment that I wasn't exposed to data extraction? Like, from the time I left my house, and even within your house, if you have smart remotes and cameras on your MacBooks and all these different things. I felt it was important to bring the folks in the room with me. And so I'm going to show you a series of quotes from actual interviewees who told us how they were feeling about data. And so this one, and we took pseudonyms from everyone, so you're not getting their actual names. But this person said, I mean, your face is not even your own anymore. Your face is being captured by cameras. That's how they feel. These are the experts of the community. And these are the folks a lot of times who are deemed as people who just don't know what they're talking about. They might not have a particular degree, or they might not be, involved in this technology and this digital justice work, but they know what they're feeling and experiencing in a day-to-day. A looping cycle of injustice. It just never goes away. When I make a mistake, it's with me forever, right? Across all 3 cities, our interviewees felt like, if I make just one mistake, it just carries with me for the rest of my life. And then it just ripples into every other thing that I want to do. So this person says, if your gas gets cut off, it's going to impede your lights. If your gas and your lights are in jeopardy or being cut off, that information is reported on your credit. And if you need to move or you're going to buy a home, it just affects everything. And so they're just feeling like, I made a mistake, or I didn't have the income to pay my bill, and now I can't do anything. Like, I can't move here, I can't move there, I can't even start my life again. And so sometimes we think it's just specific people who have these harms. All of us have experienced some challenges, and it's connected to the data that's collected about us. I have a criminal background. It's 15 to 30 years old. I pled guilty to worthless checks. It was 2003. Again, that's almost 15 years ago, but it's still held against me, and it still hinders me. It makes it extremely hard to get employment, permanent employment. Come on, clicker. My identity dictates my experience. Across all 3 cities, we had interviewees feel like who they are as a person determines what experience they have with regard to, and that being data, their whole data body, their identity, the information that's collected about them has a direct correlation to what experience they have. I'm often concerned how my orientation will play a role in someone denying me of the liberty at some point, of my liberty at some point in the future. Another person said, I truly believe that who you are and what you look like, your identity is your digital footprint. Is that it? Okay. My story, I'm more than my data. Like, I'm more than my data. See me for who I am, not just my data. You know, and a lot of folks feel like I'm just the numbers. You crunch some numbers, you make a decision about me, and that's just the end of it. Okay, so I'm gonna go a little quicker, I got 5 minutes. So I'll just say this person said, I don't know, I just feel like a number, I don't even know. Just pure helplessness. Lacking trust but full of vision, okay? Across all 3 cities, our interviewees have been strategizing to navigate these systems. Now, I'm not going to give you all these strategies because I want them to still be able to navigate the systems. But it's really important that you know that folks are out there and have been doing it. You talked about Harriet Tubman earlier. They've been doing it since the dawn of time, trying to navigate these systems, work around this data that's being collected about them, and use it to their advantage. So they gave us vision about the changes they would make if they could make changes to the system. They talked to us about the fact that your situation should not have full power over you, that you have the power to innovate new ideas and ways to navigate these systems. So what are we doing, right? Detroit Community Technology Project. I really want you all to visit detcommtech.org. And it's on another slide, but I want you to know that every resource that we collect, including what we're gathering with our data bodies research, is there for you to review, print, and utilize in your communities as well. The equitable open data. So since the beginning of the city of Detroit launching their open data portal, how many of you know about an open data portal? That's not enough for y'all. You want to know why? Because there are 85 open data portals across the U.S. and 26,000 worldwide. Open data portals. And so we've worked with the city of Detroit. Luckily, we have a good relationship with the new CIO of Detroit. She's come to our focus groups. She sat with us for 3 days as we talked about the extraction of data and how it's being utilized to harm community members. And so she's taken recommendations from us. And so we talked a lot during AMC about that kind of inside-outside strategy. I'm one of the biggest people to often go like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with the city. I ain't working with the city. You know, but the fact of the matter is our community members are being harmed in a very real way, and somebody has to deal with the city. And so we've been working with the city through the Digital Justice Coalition and Detroit Community Technology Project to offer up recommendations to how the data that's collected can become more equitable. And so we gave guidelines for equitable open data. Our opening data 1 and 2 zines are available for download on Detroit Community Technology website. You can utilize these guidelines and adapt them for your own. We hope you do, so that you can challenge your open data portals. This is a way you can get involved right now. Equitable Internet Initiative. I have to plug the Equitable Internet Initiative. Hopefully you all know a little bit about that. That is where we're creating opportunities through our Equitable Internet Initiative for community members to have access to the internet that don't have access to the internet, Detroit being 40% without access to the internet. So the Digital Stewards and the Equitable Internet Initiative are doing tremendous work, and that is one of the programs of Detroit Community Technology Project. But within that, we also have training around how data can be more secure, how you can secure your technology. So we're not just going like, get access, get access, get access. We're training and informing them on consent and security and how to be more responsible stewards of their data and their community's data. So what can you do? I already mentioned it because I know I'm running out of time, but check out the open data portals in your city. Find out what's online on your open data portals, because your information is out there, your community's information is out there, and whether you feel like you're not in a marginalized community or you're not being harmed, the fact of the matter is, number one, you owe a responsibility to your neighbors that are being harmed, and number two, your data is a part of that as well. So whether your data is being extracted to cause harm or your data is being extracted for your neighbors' data is being extracted, there is a harm that's being created, and we need co-liberation. We need people to shift from being allies to being co-liberators and recognizing that this struggle is your struggle as well. This is how so this is how you can learn more about our work. I could go on and on for days. I told them not to make me do a PowerPoint. I said it, but I think I did pretty good. But
Thank you. That was awesome. You can hear me. I'm really excited to be on this panel. My name is Courtney Ziegler. This is my third time coming to AMC, been quite a few times, so I'm really excited to be back in this space. I'm really excited to be talking about data and technology. I am a technologist by day, so I spend most of my time, if not all of my time, building a startup. I live in Oakland, California, which has become Silicon Valley in its own right, and so that's what I do. Most of my time is spending building a software company, but really, really concerned about how to use technology in really kind of impactful, socially driven ways. Really, how can technology help those that are already solving problems? I wanted to, at first when I sat down and wrote that, I was like, I like to use, how can we use technology to solve problems? Being in the tech space, you know, like these ideas of innovation and code can change the world, and you know, startups and Elon Musk and all these, you know, people like billionaires, right, who really don't give a fuck about humanity, are kind of put on these pedestals of like, these are our innovators, and these are people that are going to change the world for us. But I'm really concerned about how can we use technology to solve problems, to help people that are already changing the world, already solving problems. Those people are never kind of part of the conversation in the space that I'm in. It's really about, we have the money, we think that we know what we can do to help you, so this is how it's going to happen. I am a researcher also by trade, and I know that that's not how it works. So I bring a kind of different lens to Silicon Valley, which I'm really, really grateful for. And so for the past 5 years that I've been in the tech space, again, I've really been concerned with not only building a company, but also how I can use technology to really do some awesome things. And so last year, I was really inspired by the work of National Bailout, which is a coalition of organizations. Yay, yeah. Thank the world for them. Really inspired by their work. They did, the first time ever was like national kind of like grassroots fundraising, crowdfunding to bail out mothers for Mother's Day, Black mothers for Mother's Day. My mother's incarcerated. I think a lot of Black Americans, we have a very intimate relationship with mass incarceration. If you haven't been in jail, you know someone who has been in a jail or a prison or is there right now, without a doubt, if you're a Black American in this country. And so it affects us in really particular ways. And so I saw that, and I was really, really touched by it. Again, I work in Silicon Valley. I've seen, and you probably are all witness to this, crowdfunding being used for ridiculous things. There was about a year and a half ago, a guy did a potato salad Kickstarter and raised like almost $1 million, right? And it's ridiculous. And the things that people like raise money for, and the moments where people are trying to leverage crowdfunding and get shut out of it. So who gets to crowdfund and who gets to leverage technology to raise money? So I saw that they were doing this grassroots activist thing, and it was the first time that I had seen this kind of national conversation of raising money collectively for Black freedom. I had never been witness to that, and so I was like, man, that'd be really cool. How can I, not even knowing these folks, but inspired by their work, leverage what they're doing, bolster their work and being able to leverage the skills that I have and the networks that I have. And so I tweet a lot. Follow me on Twitter, Fake Rapper. I tweeted, would it be really cool if there was an app that, spare change technology is really popular. There's Acorns. It's an app that takes your change and invests it, which is awesome, I guess, So I was like, would it be really cool if there was an app that, kind of leveraged that same technology, but it was used to pay bail for Black Americans? And I got some traction, and people were like, I would sign up for that. And I was like, oh, word, okay, we're gonna make this happen. So that was July. The National Bailout had done their bailout in May of that year. I sent that tweet out in July, and 4 months from then, Appalition was developed. So that's really cool. We spent 4 months over the summer. Yeah, right? Yeah, spent 4 months over the summer developing the technology, building it out, figuring out how we would make it happen, and finding our partners to go live. And so it was really important for us, again, to meet people where they were doing the work, and just provide our technological skills. But we had our partner, which is National Bailout, and so we went live in November 2017, November 13th. And we became the first technology focused on tackling bail, the predatory bail system, and specifically designed centering Black Americans. We are also the fastest growing technology that has ever done that. From that time we went live on November 13th, yes, I was hoping we would have 200 users by my birthday in December. We are almost at 10,000 users now. It's incredible. Super amazing. It's super amazing. It's I'm amazed that you can take an idea and get support for it and make it happen. And I'm not a person that just talks. I like to actually do things because it's just my nature. And so having the kind of putting the tweet out there and having the data from people like, yeah, I would do that. And I was like, okay, you are already pre-users, pre-customers, so I'm going to make this happen. So Appalition, it is a transactional crowdfunding platform, and it's very unique in that it is transactional. So when we think of crowdfunding, we think of Kickstarters or Indiegogos, or where you have to, a user makes a campaign and they have a goal they're trying to raise, and people come and donate maybe $1, $20, thousands, whatever. Transactional crowdfunding is really awesome because we're leveraging spending power. So the way Appalition works is that users sign up, they link their bank accounts. We use encrypted technology, so it's completely safe. And everyday purchase that they make, as soon as you link your account, whatever purchases you make, our algorithm goes and checks your bank account, and it collects the change. So if you bought something for $1.85, that is at 15 cents. I'm bad with math. 15 cents is left over. Our app will go and automatically take it from your bank account. So you link and you forget. And which is really awesome because it's indefinite, right? There's no goals to be met. But one of the really awesome things is that we have thousands of Black Americans who are users, and we're leveraging Black spending power. And we talk a lot about in the tech industry that Black people just consume and consume. I'll say, well, how can we? All right, we do consume a lot. We do have as a number of other racial groups do in this country. So creating a technology that allows Black people to spend while at the same time letting other black people out of cages is really unique and awesome. And I think that it shows that in the space of Silicon Valley that you can center black Americans and create technology for us, which doesn't really happen in that space at all. So I'm super excited to be behind Abolition. Yes, so, oh, sorry. So, we hit 5 months about a month and a half ago. And so we launched on November 13th. We had 8K signups about a month ago. We're almost at 10,000 now. Within that time, we generated over $130,000 in spare change alone, which is amazing. So we're doing about $37,000 a month. And that was our MVP. So MVP, if you're an entrepreneur in the tech space, stands for your minimum viable product. It's the quickest thing you can get out in the world so that you can test it and see if it works. So we did the bare minimum. We coded it in 4 months. We did the most absolute minimum to see if it works and people would do it. And so, yes. And so we were able to raise $137,000. We bailed out over 40 individuals, lots of trans folks. I'm trans, so I'm like really excited that we were able to do that. Yeah. Trans women were bailed out. One woman was in solitary confinement, and we were able to get her out. And it's super amazing. We've been able to send the money to bail funds that operate in New York and Massachusetts, organizations in California that work with people who are undocumented immigrants who are illegally detained, things like that. We were ranked number 7, which is really important, of the world's top 10 most innovative companies. That was in the 3 months of launch. We were ranked number 7, and I think that's really amazing because not only, so Abolition is a public benefit company, and so it legally has a social mission now that, it's designed to use philanthropy to fight mass incarceration. And so getting that honor and being listed among companies that have been around in existence for a long time, and this was an idea, and our team is completely black, by the way. Yes. That's important for me to say. Complete black founders, black engineers, everybody's black. So it's super important that a black team is building this. Yeah, so the future of Abolition and the future of tech. Abolition has done so much in the space of technology in the short time we've been around that we've gained millions and millions of earned media. We've been profiled in multiple entities, which has helped us to gain our users. We've not done any marketing at all, except for my tweet. And we're global now. We're actually expanding to Canada this month. So yeah. So Canadian users are able to link their bank accounts and donate their spare change too. What's really interesting is that the success of Abolition has created new conversations in tech. Things that I'm excited about, but things I'm really, really afraid about. So after we've launched and people are seeing the excitement, there are other technologies now that are being developed or conceived, and it's not all good. And so sometimes I feel a little bit of sadness, like, what have I done? I kind of created a monster. But at the same time, I'm excited to show that you can use tech and center black folks and black Americans and leverage it in a certain way and challenge like a lot of systems. But at the same time, there's now this kind of like venture capitalist lens on mass incarceration and technology. And people are like, well, who do we find to disrupt bail? Which is scary, disrupt bail, like even just saying that. And then you see all these people having conversations about who can we throw some money at who's gonna like, use AI and all of these like ridiculous concepts just to, fight mass incarceration. And one of the things I'm really frustrated about is there's an app that has leveraged the publicity that Abolition got and has tied themselves to Abolition, and they're a surveillance app. And is invested by Jay-Z, so fuck that, right? Really frustrating. And it's not built yet, but it raised millions and millions of dollars, over $3 million, and it's a surveillance app. And what it does is, if you are charged with a crime, their goal is to reform bail and give people an option to be tracked by their cell phones. Wow. So exactly, right? I know, just even, so instead of fighting to end bail, right? They're like, we're just gonna make an app where users, if you're charged with a crime, you have to log onto this app called Promise, whatever, and the app tracks you. It uses GPS technology to track you. So it's basically a parole app, right? And it's like, the idea of that is ridiculous and terrifying. And they got money for it, right? And they're like, this is awesome. They're not partnering. I'm sorry, let me just turn this off. They're not partnering with organizations and people that are prison abolitionists and that are actually working to like end prisons and jails. They're about collecting data and selling it. There's obviously no other reason to have people who are charged with crimes enroll in a GPS tracking system, unless you want to track them and sell this data to other people. People were excited about it because Jay-Z's name is on it now. I don't even think he's aware of the problems and issues of this technology. I think that, again, abolition has opened up a space in technology where people are excited about how can we use tech to fight mass incarceration, but it's not all good, and it's really about collecting data and surveilling Black folks more. I'm really excited about your term, Gym Code. I was taking notes on that. I'm really excited. Being a PhD in the tech industry is really, it's beautiful because I provide a different critical lens, but it's also scary because I provide a different critical lens, and there's like this huge conversation of data right now, and the idea of a data scientist, and these are people who are not trained in collecting data or the methodologies of collecting data. It's about how to collect data and sell it. And Black folks are at the center of that. And so, thank you, I'm really excited. You all should sign up for Abolition. Abolition.us. Yeah, we are currently launching a new version within the next couple of days. So we're super excited and hope you all can sign up. Thanks.
Can we please give another round of applause for these brilliant, powerful, sobering talks? And so let's actually begin the discussion by taking a minute for each of you to reflect on each other's talks. Thank you for the suggestion. And we could start with you, Ruha.
Sure. There's so much, but I'll just point out one moment that I think is illustrative of where I think one of the areas where I'd like to push the conversation. There was a moment where Tawana was sharing the survey results, and she said, but I'm not going to share the strategies because I want people to continue to use the strategies, right? Mm-hmm. That's a moment of having access to data, but not sharing it, right? She has some knowledge and data, but refusing to share it because it would actually work against liberation, right? And so I think that's a moment of refusal that shows us that more and more data out there is not necessarily working for us. It reminds me of a line that I think was attributed to Frederick Douglass when he said, some of these so-called abolitionists are out here sharing strategies of how people are getting free. They're making the Underground Railroad the Overground Railroad. Calling out journalists and others who, you know, you have to wonder who's benefiting from that exposure, right? The individual who, you know, breaks the story, or the people that are actually using those strategies. And so it's just a very poignant moment for me that opens up this conversation about what and how we do with data. Who does it benefit, right? For us to just thinking that sharing is a straightforward good, right? The language around open source, and so sometimes you don't want to share. And so that's just something I want to put out there.
Right. I mean, okay, so sitting between these two, I'm just saying, and Sasha, which I really hope Sasha adds something to this conversation because they're brilliant as well. But yeah, just sitting between Ruha and Dr. Courtney, I'm just overwhelmed right now because it's already overwhelming to be at the AMC every year with so many thousands of people working for the better good. But to sit up here in like the new Jim Code, I was like, it's like, what? It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And just the fact that you brought the ancestors in the room and connected the data the way that you did. Yeah, I'm feeling like really full right now, emotionally. And I feel like the ancestors are present and guiding. And that is just so important. That is so important. And Dr. Courtney getting people free. I mean, come on now. I mean, serious. I'm gonna be honest, we started with Harriet Tubman and we ended with Dr. Courtney. So I'm just saying, you know, it continues. It's a cycle. The ancestors are present and still working. Yes. So that's what I'll share.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on the idea of Jim Code, and I'm really excited to go home and like nerd out. Yeah, again, working in the space that I do, and the rush about data and how we're collecting data now, and a lot of companies now, recently in the UK, they passed GDPR, which means, I forget what it stands for, but basically it allows the citizens to interact with companies in a way that you can have access to your data, know how people store your data, delete your data when you want them to delete your data. And so a lot of companies, tech companies in particular, had to, you probably saw, we were doing our privacy policy emails, like hundreds of them in the past like few weeks. And so it's really interesting actually to see people having to shift how they collect data and how they ask for data. And I'm really curious as to if something like that will happen in this country. I'm not quite sure because that's pretty much what, you know, again, in my space, that's all startups do is collect data. It may seem that you're getting a service provided, getting a ride somewhere, getting your food delivered, but all they're doing is collecting data. Appalachian, we're collecting data as well. We're actually very thoughtful because we're collecting transactional data, and we've actually started to, in this new version, be more thoughtful about what type of information we want to ask of users, so that we can use that information to, again, bolster the work grassroots activists are doing. Not to sell data, we would never do that. It's in our privacy policy, just we would never sell data. It's not a privacy policy of other technologies, so that's really sad, but we want to use the information that we collect and how people spend, where they're located, and use that to partner with organizations who are about divesting from mass incarceration with consumerism. And so we're really excited about that, but it is an interesting moment, specifically in technology, about how companies are collecting data and how they're using it, and the new technologies that they're creating to collect data and where Black people fit in with that, which is scary. To be honest, I'm actually very afraid. Even though I am a technologist, I'm very afraid of the conversations that are being held in Silicon Valley, the technologies that they're building, facial recognition. I was tweeting with that recently, and I've struggled with recognizing faces, so I understand the utility, how it could be used in positive ways, but it's not, and it's automatically being used to police and criminalize Black folks, and so it's always empowering to be in spaces like this where we talk about technology and the scary kind of pitfalls and how we can use it as liberatory practices, because that does not happen at tech conferences at all.
That last point that you were just making and sort of thinking about face recognition technology and the possibility of developing it for uses that would be beneficial, actually leads right into the first of the written questions that I had sent to all of you. And so there's this growing conversation in a number of communities, including in the computer science community, in spaces like Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency Conference, the FAT Machine Learning, now FAT STAR conference, about how to retrain algorithms to be less biased, right? So this conversation about how do we audit algorithmic bias? How do we actually quantify and understand the degree to which these tools are biased? And the first question, and this is for you, Ruha, but it's also open to anyone on the panel. It's kind of, most of the people who are doing that work, who are trying to think about algorithmic bias, are doing single axis analysis. They're saying, how are algorithms biased by gender? Or how are they biased racially? There are a few people like Joy Bolamwini who developed an intersectional algorithmic bias audit of facial recognition technology. Actually, she's looking at facial classification technology. And so she audited the three most widely used facial recognition, or sorry, facial classification algorithms that classify people into binary gender. Let's put a parenthesis around that as problematic, which Joy also knows. And she found, after constructing her own benchmark data set, because the existing data sets of faces to test them against were all pale male data sets, they were 90% white men. She created these other data sets and then audited for bias and found that they performed worst on black female faces. And she was able to quantify the proportion, like the amount of that. So the question, right, is what do we do with that? Do we need to develop intersectional bias audits and shift that whole community to do that type of work? Can we retrain these algorithms? You know, we've learned from Safiya Noble, as you talked about algorithms of oppression, but are algorithms of liberation possible? Or do we just need to say we need to shut down and escape these systems entirely? Or maybe that's a false binary.
It is the million-dollar question, and I don't have a pat, tweetable answer for you. You know, I know one of the aspects of the debate around that is how creating technical fixes, honing the technology, can actually make oppressive forms of social control more effective, right? So the better you can find my face, right? And sort of, you can target me better as well. So maybe I do want to be a little blurry. The other side is that within the way that it's being used now, we will be targeted anyway, but just more false positives, more likely to be misidentified. And so I understand the rationale for honing that so that it is better able, facial recognition is better able to identify all kinds of people. And so the response to this question about whether algorithms of liberation are possible, again, it frames it as a technical fix, right? The way that fairness is operationalized is at the level of the technology, and what I want to suggest is we need to zoom the lens out and think about how do we make institutions and our everyday practices more liberatory, and how that can then get inside the technology. So I think when we frame it around the technology saving us, we are already speaking the language and following the rules that have been set for us. So I think one of the things we always have to do when posed those sorts of questions is to ask ourselves, what option are we not given in this equation, right? It will either harm us, or we can create these technical fixes, but what about creating a context? And here again, I think your work really speaks to this in terms of the process of design being so important to whether we can even call something liberatory. The technology itself cannot be liberatory if the design process is oppressive and stratified, right? And so I think that already your work speaks to zooming the lens out and asking ourselves, where does liberation start? We are not going to be saved by the robots, but nor are we necessarily going to be obliterated by them. Again, both of those are technologically deterministic. We are either saved or obliterated, and it takes our own agency out of the equation, which we need to reassert in the process.
Thank you for that. And quick shout out, we have to use that opportunity to talk about the design justice track that's happening here at AMC, which is a space where people are thinking about how to make the design process itself do that type of work. Tawana, Honeycomb, could you talk to us about how, so the work that you're doing is so powerful, the multi-city work, all of the partners in the research process are doing this incredible sort of city level work. Could you reflect for us about the way that the opposition, the opponents, what we're facing, they are transnational in scope, whether we're talking about transnational corporations, the social media sites, whether we're talking about state surveillance and oppression and the networks that they have, the Five Eyes surveillance, data sharing arrangements, all this type of stuff. Are you seeing, or how can we imagine, or maybe it's what you're already doing, linking these different local struggles into some type of transnational process? What does that look like? Is that possible to stay rooted in the particular places, the particular cities, while also going across scales, because that's what our opposition is doing?
Well, thank you for that difficult question, Sasha. Sasha pushes you. I'm telling you, you become more brilliant by interaction. But I will tell you that Detroit Community, I have the great honor of working with Detroit Community Technology Project, because my director, Diana Nucera, is always thinking about the global perspective. And so before I even officially came on as an employee, we traveled to Brazil. We worked with technologists there. I've traveled to Guyana and worked with technologists there. I've talked to technologists in Cuba. Believe it or not, Cuba has badass technologists. Don't believe the hype. And just different places that are looking at technology and the harms of marginalized communities, and how you get access and then protect those who have access. And so, and I'm also always thinking. I'm also. Can y'all hear me? I'm also always thinking about that as a Detroiter, because I know that the global view and vision is massive on Detroit. And for a lot of decades, it was super negative. And now, because of the demographic shift, we're coming back, AKA Make America Great Again. It means the same thing. It means the same thing, I'll be honest. So when people come up to you and they say things like, aren't you happy Detroit's coming back? It's the same as hearing Make America Great Again. So I just want to let y'all know that. And so I'm always interacting with people who come to Detroit from all over the world, and I'm thinking about how you connect the dots. Angela Davis, I took away one of the most powerful quotes that she said it may have been 5 or 10 years ago. I was having at a panel or something with her, and she said it's imperative that we connect the dots, because the other side is connecting the dots. So we can't afford to be in a silo and only care about Detroit. I can't afford to. Detroit Community Technology Project can't afford to. And the benefit of being part of our Data Bodies project is that there's no option to. I'm always hearing LA's perspective. I'm always hearing Charlotte's perspective. And those are hubs that people from all over the world live in, and so even if you can't travel outside your city, you're having these interactions, especially even online. You're communicating with people online from all over the world. And so there's no option. I don't think there's an option for any of us to only care about where we come from, honestly.
Thank you so much for that, yes. It's interesting that you mentioned that you began the work with a trip to Brazil, because there is so much powerful work, coming out of Latin American technologist, networks and community organizing networks. I'm thinking of the work of Coding Rights, who have the Chupa Datos project, which is developing popular education materials for people to understand the different sites at which they're surveilled. So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Courtney Ziegler, I'm sorry. Ziegler, Dr. Courtney Ziegler. If you could reflect for us on the question, are abolitionist algorithms possible? And it's a little bit back, it's similar to the question that we were addressing earlier, but I'm thinking about what's happening right now in Pennsylvania and the risk assessment battle, which we're actually having some success there. Networks of organizers, including some of the people in this room and in AMC networks, have been pushing back on the attempt to introduce one of these risk assessment algorithms, which is supposed to flag people for low or high risk, and was originally supposedly developed to funnel more people out of cages, and was supposed to be, well, we'll just identify low risk people for diversion programs, but then over time has been evolving into this whole other thing, right, with the high risk flag as well. The question is, the rhetoric they're using is that we can do a better job than these racist judges who also make decisions based on whether they've had lunch or not about whether someone's going to be locked up. So that's the promise. But do you think that promise is a completely empty one? Should we just be dismantling these systems entirely?
Yes. Yes. Short answer. That's funny because the app that I hate is called Promise, and it's a risk assessment app, right? So it's about we can use technology to predict who's going to commit a crime or if they're going to commit a crime again, and I'm just like, yeah, that's a problem. That's, I don't believe, part of me obviously believes that we can use technology in impactful ways, and that we can create algorithms that do certain good. And abolition is one of those realities. It's an algorithm technology that, that actually does some good. But yeah, I don't think the idea that we can, that the people that are creating technologies, and we know that even without having the specific data about who's creating the technologies, it's not always people who look like us in this room, that they're going to create technologies that are racist. They're going to create technologies that are sexist. They're going to create all these technologies that are horrible because they're human beings that are horrible. Right? And so they're extending that into technology. Technology is nothing but ones and zeros that are told to do something by a person who's telling them where these ones and zeros should go. And so I do not believe that technology is going to save us in a way that we can use it to predict things. Anytime it's used to police people and surveil people, it's a terrifying future that we have. But yeah, so I waver back and forth about can algorithms actually do some type of saving? Yes, but they won't do all of the saving at all.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left, so we want to open it up now to folks in the room who have questions. I actually can't really see out there. I don't know if there are mics on the side or someone's coming around. Oh, so raise your hand if you have a question, and a mic will come to you. Or comment, yeah. Is the mic making its way to someone right now? Is that?
Yeah,
okay.
they're trying to get it to work.
Not working. All right, so I think the mic's not working right now. I just want to thank you for an amazing morning panel. What a way to wake up. or if it's subverted because it's male. So if anybody wants to
Yeah, so Abolition collects money and it sends it to community bail funds. So if you all are familiar with community bail funds, which I learned a lot by, again, following the work of National Bailout, I was ignorant towards the idea of community. I had no idea that there were legal charitable bail funds where organizations solicit funds to take that money and to go bail people out. In California, it's not allowed. We don't have charitable bail funds. And so there are about 7 states that do that. And so the way that a community bail fund works is that they collect funds, a representative from the organization. I'm not sure how they choose which people to bail out. In the case of National Bailout, their fiscal sponsor is the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund. They have their own kind of ways how they figure out who is supported in terms of urgency. If this person needs to, if they have children, if they have a job, which we all have, similar things of the urgency. And so they collect the funds, they bail someone out. Once that person shows up to their court date, which over 97% of people do, I feel like it's even 98%, that money is then returned to the bail fund, so it's almost like an endowment. So it's recycled, which is super awesome. And so with Abolition, we've, again, able to contribute to that endowment, this recycling funds. A lot of people have asked, well, aren't you just adding more money to, again, to prisons and jails? And I would say no. I think it's super important to get people out of cages as soon as possible. And money is the way to do it, unfortunately. But also helping people that are fighting to end money bail, they need money to do that. Right. So it's super important that we funnel our money to them as well. And so Abolition not only goes to bailing people out, it goes to providing legal services and post-incarceration support. While people, our activists, grassroots activists, not only do their organizations not receive funding, so using a transactional crowdfunding platform allows them to raise funding in a different way that's not through a foundation. They don't have to write a grant. They don't have to, beg for anything. All of the users on Abolition, we did a preliminary study, small survey asking why people signed up and who they are, and a lot of the users are white individuals who see it as reparations, and they actually use that term, not me. A lot of them said, this is reparations, it's my duty. I feel like I have to give my money to getting people out of jail. And so I think, and I would probably other prison abolitionists would echo the same thing, that it's important to do the urgent work of getting people out of cages so that we can all have the presumed idea that we're innocent until proven guilty, if we are proven guilty, right? And that in turn will help us to end money bail and really end prisons and jails in the long term. So
yes, thank you.
Money is important.
So we have time for just a couple more questions. Raise your hand if you have a question brewing, and we would get a couple at once.
There's somebody over here.
I can't really see. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no.
Hello?
There's a mic there.
Hi.
Sorry.
I just want to thank you all for the discussion. It was very powerful. I feel very inspired leaving. My question is primarily for Dr. Ziegler. I've been following you on Twitter for a long time. Since your initial tweet about making the change for abolition, so it's really great to see the progress since then. But you've done a lot of discussions about can tech, save us. Essentially, the answer from all of you has been no, because of the people designing the tech. So I guess my question is it possible for us to use tech to change the people? I've done a little bit of research into implicit bias training, doing virtual reality. I've heard some pros and cons from that, but I just wanted to get your opinion on, can we use tech to change the people, and then those people can then change the tech?
Okay, thank you. And we're going to take the other question also, and we'll answer them together.
I have a big voice, but okay. everything was uplifting and heartbreaking. But as a teacher, the thing that hit me the worst was your slide that said the more people are exposed to the facts that the disparity of brown and black people in jail, the more resistant they become. That's hard as a teacher, because when I'm teaching the new Jim Crow before the code, it does change their lives, and they want to bring their parents to class, but at the same time, they don't know what to do. And then I have the students that look like me that are like, they start rationalizing. They start saying, well, it's because they commit more crime. It's like, wait a minute, you know? And so we need more tools, because Shakespeare behind bars doesn't work for everybody, right? It's the other end. So the people that are resistant, those of us teaching them need better strategies, emergent ones. Hello, Adrian. But what do you do with that? As a professor, doesn't it kill you that when you give data that should open eyes, it closes them?
Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you for those 2 questions. I do want to try and respect the time of the AMC and let people get to other sessions. So we're going to quickly close out, and in the final 30 to 60 seconds for each of you, could you please address the question and offer a final thought?
Yeah.
and we're going to start with you.
Sure. So no, it doesn't kill me, because what that study indicates is that what we've confined knowledge and the facts to is the problem, not the actual process. And so for me, my approach is to understand that my students in a Freirean sense are not empty vessels that I'm pouring data into. They're bringing knowledge but also distortions to the conversation. So my job is to engage what they already know and what they think they know before I can introduce them to this body of research. The problem with the process that we saw with that Stanford study is we assume that people are empty vessels. All we got to do is pour in the facts about the disparities as if they don't already have stories and knowledge and distortions in their mind that they're going to use to interpret that. For us to be effective educators, we have to understand that there's this reciprocal conversation, that we have to understand what our students know and think they know as a starting point before we can then introduce new knowledge.
I'm just going to say, in the words of Jimmy Boggs, I am an organic intellectual.
Yes.
And so, and I recognize that the folks that I get to talk to every day are the experts of their own experience.
Yes.
And so I might have the tools and the resources to add to that experience, or to collaborate with them on their experience, but I'm going to say we need to opt back into each other and stop looking for tech and data and all these other systems to solve the crises for us. I'm all about access, and I will fight for access to the end of my days. But at the end of the day, we are what we need. And so we need to opt back into each other, and that is not a separate technology or system.
Ditto. I don't have anything awesome to add. I do think your questions were very similar. I do think you can use technology to educate. I think abolition is a great example, because even though there are people who are signed up users, there are also people who are educated about what bail is. Abolition played a significant part in Google actually banning the ads from bail bondsmen 2 weeks ago. So technology it's not going to save us, but there are things that it can do to educate folks.
Yes. Thank you all so much.
I love you. Oh my gosh, you are amazing. Can I hug you?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I'm mic'd up, y'all. Great. Thank you.